My talk is going to be on my 10 favorite food crops for Florida. And I had to make a list because it's like trying to choose between your children. It's actually easier to choose between your children, like when some of your children are being bad. Like, I can't believe that you were the only one that didn't get into that stash of M&Ms. This is the only kid that I really like. So now, occasionally that sort of thing happens, but generally, I'm just making a general statement. Choosing between your children is usually difficult. Usually. So I was going through and I'm like, oh man, I have got a list. So I'm going to give you the top 10 best, and then I'm going to give you 10 more honorable mentions that will just run through because I just couldn't do it. There are so many beautiful things that grow in Florida, and a lot of us are missing. We're fighting with plants that don't really love Florida. So my criteria for this list is it's good to eat. It's for sale in my... No, I'm just kidding. It's for sale in my nursery. It's not necessarily for sale in my nursery, but it's good to eat. It's easy to grow. It is adapted to the state of Florida, and that's really the biggest thing, is to adapt your gardening to where you are instead of trying to grow things from far away, like seed the stars we were talking about earlier. Growing things that are locally adapted makes a huge difference. That's why you want to buy from Sam. You don't want to buy from somebody that's shipping in. It doesn't matter if it's a great nursery. They could be great nurseries, but there is something to having something locally adapted. So I'm going to start. This is not just annuals. It's not just perennials. This is just an overall list. So these are my favorite food plants. And if you were to plant these food plants, you would have success in Florida, and you would have consistent food. Number 1, right behind me over here. This is a mulberry, the contorted mulberry. So when I tell people, I was like, have you tried mulberries? How many people have tried mulberries? Okay, this is a very well-educated group. Because a lot of times I say, they're like, here we go around the mulberry bush, the monkey and the weasel. I'm like, yeah, the monkey and the weasel. The monkey and the weasel, man. The monkey and the weasel know where you get the organic berries, you know what I mean? So the monkey and the weasel, man. You know? So the monkey and the weasel they're going around the mulberry bush. That's good. But a mulberry bush, you get the dwarf variety, it's a bush, but generally it's a tree. And I found I struggled to grow strawberries years ago. Strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. So. A little bit here, a little bit there. I like this one. I like that one. It's pretty good. You get your handful of strawberries. You get your handful of blackberries. You figure out, I don't know if my blueberries like my pH. I should have done this. Or I probably shouldn't have done this. Or I should have done this. I planted a mulberry tree and I barely took care of it in that same time when I was testing all these berries. I really want berries. I want a bunch of berries, like smoothies and all that kind of stuff. I planted a mulberry tree, and in 2 years, it was about 12 foot tall, and it bore us 6 gallons of mulberries. 6 gallons. And that's just what we actually counted and put in the freezer, because the 2-year-old was eating everything on the lower part of the tree, and the birds were eating everything on the top, and we only harvested what was in the middle, so it may have been more. But there were a lot of purple little fingers around our house. And I was like, what is 6 gallons of organic berries worth? If you were to put them in a little clamshell, 4-ounce packages or whatever they have, and you spend, $5 for this little thing of organic berries to eat with your quinoa, it's expensive, right? It's gonna be like $5. So that was like $300 of berries. It was something ridiculous, right? I calculated it out once. It's like, this is ridiculous. And that thing barely had any work. We had just burned some junk over there, and we had thrown some old logs and stuff aside. I'm like, I got this bare root mulberry. I'll just stick it in the ground back there and see what happens. And it was like this little stick, and it was 12 feet tall. And it's year after year after year after year, and more and more and more. So you have so many mulberries. So that's a super easy one. Definitely plant it. There are white mulberries, red mulberries, and black mulberries according to the Latin names, which are really confusing because the white mulberries can also make black mulberries. They don't always make white mulberries, and the red mulberry makes black mulberries, and the black mulberry makes black mulberries. But they're whatever. Don't pay any attention to the Latin names. Just buy ones that, your local nursery has and just ask them, like, what about this one or this one or this one? You'll find some good ones. The most commonly sold one is the dwarf black mulberry. That is my least favorite of all of them. It's not a bad mulberry, but it's not awesome compared to the other ones. It's very easy to start from cuttings. And so it's everywhere. But there are better mulberries out there. And just plant some mulberries. I've planted at least a dozen so far in our yard, and I will plant more. I want so much that the birds can gorge themselves and we can have tons and tons of berries. There's some white varieties that taste like honey. There's some black ones that are tart. There's some that are super sweet. And it's fantastic. So grow that. The next one, Celosia argentea, which is also known as Lagos spinach. The amaranths and the celosias, they're in the same family. They're both really easy to grow. They tend to self-seed and come back. If you look at some of my nursery pots, there are little purple amaranths that have self-seeded in there. Anything that grows back and grows itself like a weed, I like. It means that I don't have to plant it again. And often when something self-sows, it grows better than anything that I planted. I have had it happen where I've planted something and it's got about this big and it didn't look very good and then it died. And the next year, it had managed to kick some seeds out. The next year, I've got plants this big that self-seeded. They didn't get transplanted. They didn't get cared for. They just grew themselves. And that's often the best plants. And I found that Celosia argentea, also known as Lagos spinach, it's a good cooked green. The amaranths are cooked greens too. You can also, some of the amaranth varieties, particularly Golden Giant, makes a lot of seeds, and you can process them out as a grain. We have fried them in little cakes, mixed them with some egg to kind of make them stick together, and then fried them in a pan, and that was pretty good. But generally, we just eat them for the leaves, and we give, the seeds just end up all over our yard, and they come back again and again and again. Now, my next one. This one is a delicious, and I think really an underutilized fruit tree, the Japanese persimmon. There's multiple varieties of Japanese persimmon. There's a lot of really good ones, but the most common one that we know of is fuyu, the fuyu persimmon. The fuyu persimmon is a non-astringent persimmon. If you've had wild persimmons and you get them any time that they're not fully and completely ripe, they are astringent. They dry up all the saliva in your mouth, and they're like eating cotton balls. It's like, oh, this is terrible. I had somebody tell me once, they came to my nursery booth, and he says, "What's that tree?" I said, "Well, that's a persimmon." I hate those. I hate those things. I had one of them things once. I don't know how anybody eats that. So I understand. If somebody told me that bananas were edible and I picked a green banana out of the bunch at Walmart and I bit into it with the peel on, I would say that was the nastiest fruit in the world, and that everybody was dumb, and that every one of those trees on the entire planet should be destroyed because I didn't eat it at the right time. It's gross. It's not done properly. Like, I don't want to eat raw chicken, right? I mean, there's a preparation. There's a time. And so if you get them when they're fully ripe, our native persimmons, you can have some pretty nice tasting persimmons. They're delicious. But the Japanese persimmons are greatly improved on top of it. The North American persimmon has not been much improved compared to the breeding that went into the Japanese persimmons. Big and sweet. There are non-astringent varieties like fuyu that you can eat crisp like an apple right off the tree. Or you can get the astringent types, which are generally more acorn shaped. There's a lot of varieties. The astringent type, you can't eat it when it looks like it's ready. You have to go sit it on your counter and let it start to get soft and almost gelatinous where you can see through it. And then you eat it like pudding. And the flavor of those is really subtle and spicy with different flavors in it. It's just a more sublime persimmon, but it's rather like sushi. California roll, or you're going to have sashimi. Like everybody, the fuyu is accessible to everybody. So if you don't know if you like persimmon, you're going to like it. It tastes like honey and sunshine. It's delicious. Easy to grow, hardly any problems. There's a couple of persimmons right there. He's got persimmons all over the place. Sam is collecting persimmons now. He's basically got the genetic repository of persimmons in north central Florida at this point. But the astringent ones, I plant both of them. They are self-fertile usually, and if you plant two, you just get more fruit. And then you get seeds, and you could start more. But I highly recommend persimmon, very easy to grow. And they also tend to bloom late. They wake up late in the year after the last frosts, whereas a lot of stuff, it wakes up, your peaches start blooming in February, and then in March it gets down to 21 degrees or something at the beginning of March, and boom, that's it, no peaches. The persimmons like, I'm not getting up. I'm staying here. You wake me up when it's hot. And that's great, because you'll always get extra fruit, and all my kids love them. The next one, cherry tomatoes. Tomatoes will break your heart in Florida. I can't tell you how many people say, well, when I grew up in New Jersey, we had, my grandpa, he grew tomatoes that were like the size of your head. We would get 50 buckets of tomatoes. I was so sick of tomatoes. My grandma, she makes sauce. Man, she could make sauce, man. But I moved down here, and you know what happened? Man, everything was like, they're terrible. It's like it gets hot, and then they get busted, and then like the things come and eat them, and there's garbage, and I hate it. And I can't grow nothing in Florida. Well, it's not really that well adapted to tomatoes down here. It's too cold, and then suddenly it's too hot. And then it pours rain after it'll be dry for 2 or 3 weeks, and the tomatoes like finally starting to look pretty good. It's like, hey, it's just a little wilty, and then it'll pour rain, and you'll get 12 inches in one weekend, and all the tomatoes split, and they rot, and they die, and you're miserable, and you hate it, and the only thing you ever really wanted to do was grow tomatoes, and you rethink your entire life. Why did I move to the free state of Florida? Could have stayed in Michigan. Could have grown tomatoes 3 months from now when it warms up. So anyhow, tomatoes will break your heart, but the cherry tomatoes generally grow quite well. In particular, the Everglades tomato. The Everglades tomato is like a weed. And in fact, it probably is a weed. It sprawls on the ground. It doesn't want to be contained. It's a free spirit. It shows up in every crack. It shows up all over the edges of your garden. It sprawls all over the place, and it makes tons and tons and tons of little tomatoes, which we have made sauce out of them. They have the most explosive, wonderful, delicious tomato flavor, but it takes a lot of child labor per quart of sauce because it's a lot of picking. I try to count things and how many child hours is this going to take? And is it worth ending their homeschooling curriculum for a while to make sauce, right? Like, kids, you're not going to go to college, but this is going to be the best spaghetti you've ever had in your life. It takes a lot of hours because they're only that big. But when you go wandering through the garden and you can pick a tomato that goes often all the way until the first frost. I've had them into December. We're still picking tomatoes out of the garden. And if you have chickens, the chickens will eat them, and then they'll plant them all over the entire yard. That is a great tomato. But a lot of the cherry tomatoes do quite well. They have a tougher skin. They're more disease resistant. I think they're a little more wild. They're a little less inbred, and they can tolerate Florida more. So, cherry tomatoes. The next one I really like, they call them sand pears. You can see old pear trees around here that are just gigantic, 40 or 50 feet tall sometimes, and they'll be behind houses where nobody has taken care of it in years, and the pears are just falling on the ground. And people will be like, man, them some hard pears. Yeah, some of them are hard pears. You gotta be hard to live in Florida. You gotta be hard to go from 25 degrees to 105 degrees in the same year, and sometimes in the same week. Well, not quite, but it's rough. And these pears, some of these old varieties of pears are just tough. Pineapple, Orient, and then there's some varieties that have been released. Florida Home, Hood, Baldwin, they're all good. Some of them, like Kiefer, you can push down here. LeConte is more of a dessert pear. It's good. It's a little more prone to fire blight. You got to watch out for fire blight. But I am a big fan of those old pear varieties. They take a little while to get rolling. But once you have them, you can make pear sauce. We make pear salsa all the time. With dried pears. Anyhow, you can do a lot with pears. They're very, very useful. The next one is very easy. Sweet potatoes. A lot of different varieties of sweet potatoes. Purple sweet potatoes, white sweet potatoes, orange sweet potatoes. Now, the easiest way I find to grow sweet potatoes, instead of buying slips, is I just go to the grocery store. You can go to the fancy grocery store, like if you want to feel better about it, like the whole International Market or whatever, Sweet Leaf Magnolia, whatever market. But just go get some sweet potatoes from somewhere. Hopefully, it's like, if they're conventionally grown, who knows what's in them, Oh, no, I feel bad. But don't worry. If you grow them out long enough, the poisons will thin, I think. So You go and get some sweet potatoes and you throw them on their sides in a bucket. Don't do that thing where you stick the toothpicks in it. That's fun to do when you're a kid. You know, you stick the toothpicks in the sweet potato and you stick it in a jar, and then the vines start to grow out of it, and then the bottom of it rots, and your mom gets mad. She's like, "What is that smell? What is that smell?" It's not my sweet potatoes. They're my fucking sweet potatoes. You just go ahead and you just lay them on their side and put a little dirt over them, potting soil, right? This time of year, right now. Go get some and lay them on their sides. Whatever, get 3 or 4 varieties. I went to Publix and I got this like steaming assortment or something. It was like they had them in a little, you know, where they have tons of plastic and styrofoam for like that much food. There was like a multiple different colors of sweet potato in a little clamshell thing. And I was like, oh, I'll just take all of those home and I'll put them in a bucket. So I put them all in a bucket and put some dirt on them. When they start to make the sprouts, you just break pieces of the sprouts off and you stick them in the ground and they make more potatoes. You just jam it right in the ground. Take your machete, dig a little slit, boom, put that little slip in there, and it'll look like it's dead for 5 or 6 days. It's just all wilted and horrible looking, and then suddenly the leaves will go, and it'll start to run, and it'll run, and it'll run, and it'll run. I wait all the way until the fall, and then I dig them up so I can get the biggest potatoes possible. I want the biggest mass. If I'm going to waste all that space on sweet potatoes, man, I want some big sweet potatoes. So you let them run all the way till the end. Don't worry, 90 days, 120 days, whatever. Just wait until right before your first frost and go out there and dig them all up. And you'll get some big ones. Those are easy. And I mixed up so many varieties. I had no idea what colors they were going to be when we dug them out of the ground. And then we would roast them. My wife roasts them and just puts butter and salt on them. We don't do, you know, like marshmallows and stuff. We don't do any of that stuff. It doesn't need it. Just roast them, and we serve them. So we would have white ones and purple ones and kind of more orange ones and some super sweet ones and some that are a little more flowery. Some of them are like flour texture almost. They're like starchier varieties that come from the tropics. All of them are good. And it's, you kind of just could slice pieces of all the different potatoes and try them, and we figured out which ones we liked, and then we would go and nick the skins to see what colors they were underneath and just replant the ones we thought, you know, for the next spring. Sweet potatoes are very easy, and they are a good staple. Just put them in the sun somewhere and give them a little bit of organic matter if you can. Hot peppers. Anybody try to grow bell peppers here? Yeah. Anybody grow really beautiful bell peppers here? Babies. You know what? You get a bell pepper. Okay, this guy. Ask him about bell peppers afterwards. So the bell peppers, right? They're like a Porsche. You know, you've got to baby it. You got to take it to the, you know, make sure that it's all aligned properly and that the seats are heating or whatever. I mean, so I've heard. I don't have a Porsche. I drive a 2006 Ford Econoline van that I bought from the Dahmer estate. It's a really like high intensity, like give it compost, give it miracle grow it in a greenhouse type of thing. Otherwise, you often get peppers that are about that big, or they get weird curls in them and stuff. But I found out when you grow hot peppers, most of the hot peppers are just way stronger. They're rather like the cherry tomatoes. Now, there are some sweet peppers that are like smaller sweet peppers that do pretty well here. But cayenne peppers do extremely well. Habanero peppers do extremely well. Tabasco peppers, any of your little Thai peppers, all of those do really well. Now, the downside is you can't live on them because you'll destroy your intestinal tract. But you can make the most beautiful sauces and salsas and dried pepper flakes and everything. I love cayenne peppers for this because when they dry, they're sweet and hot. They're not just, I just don't grow the ones that are exceptionally burning hot. It's like they're cool. It's like a contest to see, you know, if you could do it. But I actually want to use them, so I make a lot of sauce at the end of the year. I smoke our cayennes and I put in a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of sugar and some garlic and blend it all up in the blender, and I make this awesome smoked hot pepper sauce. And that's just one of those things we like to grow and give away. So I love them. You can't live on them necessarily. Now I'm going to get to the one that I'm always obsessed about. That is true yams. True yams, the Dioscorea species. That's not sweet potatoes, those are true yams. They grow vines, they grow up. They're starchy vegetables from the tropics. Name yam, ube yam, Jamaica prickly yam, Jamaica yellow yam. There's a lot of different names for them, but the yam name got commandeered by the advertising industry, which destroys everything. And it got applied to, southern yams, sweet potatoes. But true yams aren't even slightly related to sweet potatoes. They're a climbing vine from the tropics. They make a starchy root. It's a very good replacement. Many of them are a very good replacement for potatoes. I have a variety over there at our booth that's called Chinese yam, Dioscorea polystachya. So it's just in case you're on Jeopardy. Dioscorea polystachya makes little edible bulbs in the air. You know the dreaded air potato? That is a true yam, but that is a poisonous escapee of a government project, Mark. You guys did love bugs too, didn't you? Yeah, it was an experiment. And the green bees, yeah. Anyhow, so that is a true yam, but it is not an edible. There are edible varieties of Dioscorea bulbifera, but it is a major pest. This one is much more controllable. The Chinese yam has little bulbils like this, but they're edible. I call it the tater tot vine because you can just saute them in a pan, and they are just like little tater tots, salt and butter, and they're delicious. They're like little bitty potatoes, about that big. And if you leave it in the ground, it's a perennial. It grows back year after year. Just let it keep growing on the trellis, and it'll make more and more of those bulbils. You can just go and shake the trellis in the fall and let them all fall into a tarp, and take them inside and fry them like little baby potatoes. They're great. And so I don't even bother harvesting the root. The root is edible, but I want the bulbils to just grow again and again and again because, tater tots on a vine is kind of cool. But there's, I harvested one last year. That's a Dioscorea alata. That's a different variety. That was 85 pounds out of my garden. Unfortunately, that one got placed on the Florida invasive species list, so no nursery will sell it to you. So our greatest potato replacement, we're going to have to send a strongly worded letter to the government. I'm sure they'll listen to us. But I would like that one back. I would like that off the list because we should be eating it, not just spraying it with Roundup when we find it in a park. The next one is cucuzza squash. Now I have one squash that's a summer squash that I don't mention because it's not a food. It starts with a Z. I don't like it at all. My mom used to make me eat it. I wouldn't eat it, so I didn't get any ice cream. So that's done. We don't grow that one. But cucuzza is actually a well-bred variety of bottle gourd, Lagenaria cicera. Lagenaria cicera is an African tropical bottle gourd, right? And you get those apple gourds and bushel gourds. That's all that same Lagenaria cicera. This is a bred version of it that is an excellent summer squash. It is delicious and very prolific. It is a vining squash that just it will cover a trellis. You got to plant them about 20 feet apart. If you plant them on top of each other, they stop producing because they all start fighting. They are super vigorous. I've had them just pop up at the edge of my nursery and grow on the ground. The cucuzza is our new go-to summer squash. We got a couple 100 pounds of them last year with no work. And it is a very long, they get about 4 or 5 feet long, but you got to harvest them when they're a little younger. Now, the only downside is you do have to peel them. The skin is not very good. So you peel it, slice it up, and it absorbs the flavor of whatever you cook with. It's mildly sweet and nutty and is excellent. And it grows all the way until the fall here and just keeps going and going and going. So I would not be without that one yet. This is a newer addition to my list. A couple of years ago, we started growing them seriously, and now I'm like, man, this is a great summer vegetable. Cucuzza is C-U-C-U, cuckoo, Z-Z-A, and it was an Italian heirloom bred up.
Does it do well on a fence too, or?
It does very well on a fence. Any kind of trellis, just as long as it's got 20 or so feet to run. It'll run sideways. It'll run over bushes. It'll probably run over trees. Now, my last one, we're talking about things that run over other things, is the Seminole pumpkin, named after the Seminole Indian tribe. So that is a small pumpkin. It's gotten to be much more popular than it used to be. Everybody's growing it now, it seems like. They root at every joint along the vine. So particularly if they really start running, you can go and kick some dirt over the nodes in the joints in the vines, and they will reroot more. And then if something destroys part of it, or your kid runs it over the lawnmower or something, both sides of it will continue to grow. And they'll both grow. And they're very productive. They keep for a year or longer on the counter. I've had one keep as long as 2 years on the counter, which is great. If you're talking survival crops, having something that you can keep without refrigerating, without canning for an extremely long time. There's some pretty ones over at the edge. I see the stars have some over there. So Seminole pumpkin. That rounds out my top 10 list. Now I'm going to tell you these children are not going to be in on my inheritance necessarily, but I write them cards around the holidays. These are the 10 honorable mentions. And I'm just going to run through these real quick. Yard-long beans. They grow almost a yard long. Some of them actually do reach a yard. It is a close relation to the southern pea, the black-eyed pea, which is just a bomb-proof pea that's super, super easy to grow, a little bean. And these guys grow all the way through the summer in the heat better than a lot of the other varieties do. They're quite vigorous. They do have a tendency to attract aphids and fire ants. The fire ants will come and they'll bring their little aphid buddies, and the next thing you know, they'll set up a little farm on them. So sometimes this will be a problem. But I have also found that if I go along there with a hose and I blast the aphids off with a little bit of the hose, that kind of keeps the populations down. The beans are really good and nutty. They're really only a green bean. They're not good for a dry bean because they make a shriveled little itty-bitty bean if you save them. And it's not worth making a soup out of. It's too small to be a good legume. But it's a very good and productive green bean that outproduces the other ones and is a very good pole bean. Now the next one is one that I've been testing in the last couple of years. It is called the tun tree, Tuna sinensis. That is Chinese mahogany. It is the furthest north adapted variety of mahogany that I know of. Tuna sinensis. This one has leaves that taste like kind of roasted garlic and beef. It has this amazing beefy, garlicky flavor that is delicious. And you're like, what? How did this tree looks like it could be a sumac or something. It has that kind of design, but then you bite into the leaves, you're like, whoa, that's delicious. And they're often grown in China. They crop them down and they grow back repeatedly. And they just keep taking the new leaves and sauteing them, putting them in stews, whatever you're going to do with it. I would scramble them with eggs. Mine, I put 3 of them out. I think I put 3 of them out in the food forest to let them grow to full size because I think it would be really cool to harvest mahogany lumber out of my yard. Now mahoganies, if you don't know, like there's no mahogany that I know of that grows past about Palm Beach, a little further than that. It's a true tropical. And I don't know that the leaves of any of those mahoganies are actually edible, but this one has edible leaves and it is cold hardy to about zone 5. And it's gone through our winters and it just pops right back up. Looks totally great, but it looks tropical and it's a good one. Tuna sinensis. This is one I'm excited about this year. The next one is wild plums. I like wild plums because they don't take any effort. You know, they're not grafted. You don't have to hardly pay any money for them. You just go and you can dig them out of the woods when they're dormant, or you can buy them from native plant nurseries and just let them grow. And they don't have all the disease issues and everything. They just grow. They just grow and grow and grow. Now some of them are better than others. Flatwoods plum is like sometimes it's okay. Chickasaw, sometimes it's okay. The American plum. I tasted a bunch of American plums this last year and they were very delicious, so I planted all of the seeds in my nursery. I really like Prunus americana. That is a good one. It makes these big clonal colonies of plums, and it made the best tasting plum jam that we ever had. It was like the plummiest plum. But another interesting thing people don't know that I learned from one of the guys that developed the Tropic Beauty peach years and years ago was they found out that Chickasaw plum is basically a universal rootstock for most of the stone fruit. So most of the stone fruit will actually graft onto Chickasaw plum, and Chickasaw plum grows in the worst soils. Nasty, sandy, acid, fast-draining, nematode-riddled soils. There's a Chickasaw, there's a Chickasaw, there's a Chickasaw. And you hardly ever see them until it's spring, and then you see these little tufts of white blooms in the wind. What's that? That's a plum. That's a Chickasaw. And it tends to make a lot of suckers. So I had one in my yard, and I grafted a really, like an improved plum on top of it. I think it was a Japanese variety, big purple plum. And I grafted a little piece of it in the spring onto one of the sucker branches that was coming up, and it took perfectly, and it grew vigorously. And the next year, it bore about a dozen large plums on one side of the Chickasaw. Now, Chickasaw is really willowy and has kind of, it just wants to fall over, so that branch started to go down, and I tied a stake. I just hammered a piece of conduit into the ground and tied it up so it would grow. And then I grafted next year nectarine and peach, and they both took onto it. But they outgrow it really quickly. So they get, like, you'll have the wood is about this thick on the grafted top part, and the Chickasaw is about like that. So it looks really funny, but if you have really poor soil and you have a Chickasaw plum, and you're struggling with peaches or plums, just graft them onto it. Because they'll live on that. It will nurture them and help them to grow when you wouldn't expect it. Ginger and turmeric. All the gingers and turmerics are pretty easy to grow here. They come back. They tend to freeze down in the winter, but most of them are going into dormancy anyways. If you think you've killed it, just wait until June because it's probably going to pop up still. They almost never die. I've actually hacked them out of the ground on accident, digging holes and stuff, and then have them re-sprout, and, you know, they don't worry about it. Ginger and turmeric, very easy to grow. The next one is watermelons. Watermelons, particularly the smaller watermelons, Charleston Gray, they're higher work, but they're so worth it. If you've got a nice spot, you could throw some compost in the ground and get it going, you're going to be able to grow watermelons. This is about the time of year that you would plant them, and they get running. And one of my sons has been crossing all these different varieties of watermelons over the years, and it has been a really fun thing for him to do because he's got something like 25 different varieties of watermelons, and he just saves from the winners and he replants them, and he's basically made a land race out of watermelons. The next one, moringa. Moringa John already talked about this one. Definitely just grow moringa. Eggplant. Eggplant is easy to grow. If you like eggplant, it likes the heat. Give it some compost. Take care of it when it's little, and often you get too many eggplants. You're going to be giving them away or using them for ammunition or something. Okra. Here's another one. This is like some people don't like okra, so it is what it is. But they are very easy to grow and they like the heat. So all the way through the summer, you can get okra. The next one is chestnut. Chestnut is a really easy, fast-producing tree. I highly recommend growing chestnuts if you don't have any. Stick a few in the ground. They need a mate, so you have to have 2 of them. And finally, loquat. Now, the downside of loquat is that the blooms freeze off at somewhere between 24 and 26 degrees. So some winters, if it gets cold, they bloom in like November to February, and then you usually have another frost or so. So if it's in a more protected area, the further south you get, the easier it gets. The further north you get, well, the tree is cold hardy to 10 degrees or so, but it is not capable of bearing fruit because the blooms on the young fruit will freeze off, and then the tree just happily goes child-free the rest of the year, no responsibilities. But that's it. You don't get any fruit, right? So I've been trying to protect them and trying to grow them up where I am, but I'm in zone 8B very solidly. It got down to 11 degrees. The loquat tree looks beautiful, but it has no children. It's been writing me postcards from the beach. So, oh well.